Welcome to another edition of Chicago Crossing Model Railroad at the Bench. Eric here with you. And today we begin one of many parts of a series about making N-scale garbage. And one of my most recent garbage accomplishments was making tiny little cardboard N-scale boxes. That's been kind of an interesting little trip. It worked really nicely. I've used it for the currency exchange building, and so I'll take you along with me. I'll show you what I do in order to make boxes in N-scale. So first off, a few tools here. I've got my X-Acto blade, number 2 blade there, a bunch of forceps. I've got a square, although really these things are too small to really use rulers. And I also have a scale ruler. And this is actually important. N-scale reference is down here. It just gives you an idea of, what size stuff is, so that you can have an idea of how many feet and all that sort of stuff that you're working with. So this helps you make things in miniature that look reasonably believable. So with that in mind, if you think about most boxes for storage, they're going to be usually between 1 and 2 feet long. Beyond that, cardboard doesn't work terribly well, because if you're packing it full of heavy stuff, then it happens to probably fail. So in that sense, if we're storing things like books or documents or things that'd be in the Pickens cane warehouse, probably we're looking at boxes that are around that size. And if you want to get an idea, again, we need to use millimeters here, because this is literally too small for inches to make any sense. So we're looking at boxes that are basically 4 millimeters at the biggest. And from my perspective, I'm not going to necessarily sit around and measure 4 millimeters as the size of the box, at least not for these purposes. But actually, that's 5 millimeters. My bad. Anyway, instead what I'll do is just kind of eyeball it to scale, and that's never a really difficult thing to do. So the main material for this is essentially paper. This is an index card, and so if you look up close, it's got paper-like qualities. This sort of stuff actually does miniaturize reasonably well, and so I think that is helpful here. It's also really, really thin. And that's what I mean by miniaturizing well, is N-scale thickness is something you actually do need to consider if you're trying to make these fine scale little bits and pieces. So this is about right. The other tools I've got, this is actually critical. So these are the marker set that I talked about earlier for graffitiing rail cars. Well, it has a beautiful kind of light brown cardboard looking color. That's what we're going to use to actually color the boxes. And basically what I'm going to do is just color an entire portion of this card and then start cutting out boxes. And then I've got a couple little tweezers and forceps and things, of course. Last up is we're going to need some CA. For me, I just use Starbond. We'll probably use the Starbond medium. And then I've got a really tiny little thin thing to apply the Starbond with. If I need something thinner, then I have a very, very small dental pick. See if I need to use that or not. Sometimes the other tool is just fine. All right, so let's get started. First thing is the easy, fun thing, which is basically let's color. And so what I'm going to do is essentially just take this acrylic paint marker, and I'm going to color out a zone of this piece of card. Okay, so now we've got two sides of basically equivalent cardboard color. All right, everything is dried up over here. And so the next step is to cut out essentially what are little cross shapes like this. If you think about what a box is, basically a box is a cube, so you have 6 equivalent sides. If we want an opening to the box, then that means it is going to be 5 equivalent sides. And so you do that by generating kind of a cross cutout like that. And so if you ever want to practice on this sort of thing, you can basically make these little X's, and potentially you could even just use this as your methodology. The reason I don't do that is because of the fact that these markers don't make exactly equivalent marks. You could potentially even just make a stencil or something like that you draw an outline on and cut out. For me, most of the boxes I'm making are just going to be kind of ruined looking anyway, and so I don't feel terribly picky about that point. But let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to pick a spot over by the edge here, and that first cut that you make is really going to dictate the size of the box. So for instance, I've made a cut that is about that long there. If I hold up the end scale ruler to it, then that box is, what does it look to be? About maybe 18 inches. That's actually a pretty good size for a storage box. And we can see it kind of coming out now. I'll set it down there. So, oops, it shows you how light these things are. All right, so there we basically have the beginning of a cardboard box. So the next step is to fold it. And you may be saying, Eric, how the hell do I do that? Easiest way to do that is to take a small forceps and then to take the dull side or the flat side of your X-Acto blade, and then use that to basically kind of press down, and then you can sort of fold it up like so. And because this is paper or card, it folds up actually pretty damned easily, which is nice. So what you get once you fold that up is you get a side of the box. So that's cool. All right, now let's fold up the rest. This is, I'll bring in the little white thing here so you can see a little bit better. I mean, that's basically the general formation of a box, right? So it actually has an interior just sort of like this, just like that. And you can see that these two flaps are a little bit longer on, oops, the ends over here. So this end here and this end here are both a tad bit longer. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit as well. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to reiterate that same process. Is I'm going to use the flat end of the knife, and I'm just going to back off these other corners a little bit just to get some room. And this time, this sort of thing is a little bit more fiddly if you want to try to get these flaps. One thing you can do is you can actually just sort of crease it with the knife, and that may give you a little bit easier time to try to bend it. Now you've got a box with flaps for the lid, just as a normal box would have. Okay, so craziness continues. Now what we need to do is we actually need to get this thing set up in the formation of being a box. And so for that, a couple things I'm going to do. One is I'm going to now just hold down the center of it and really just kind of get these, each of these folds in so that everything aligns pretty well. Oops. And if you're using tweezers for that, just, don't do what I did right there, which is essentially make the tweezers expand and ruin your work. So you can even kind of squeeze them like that with the tweezers. There we go. And so now it's time for CA glue. That will basically help to secure the corners of this thing. And again, you can see, like, once it's secured, that actually is a friggin' box. Unbelievable. It's the age of miracles. All right. And so I'm basically just going to work on the inside. And what I did is I basically just put some CA there. And so now, on the other side, I can take the other part of the dental tool and just kind of adhere these things together. And if need be, you can always, just take a little bit of super glue and even work at it from the outside. But, keep in mind that just leaves a sort of sheen on this stuff. And so at that point, you are going to want to repaint it. But, that's not the worst thing in the world. Anyway, looking through a magnifier, I can really see easily what's going on. Not sure if this will show for you. Potentially not. There you go. So that's what I see. And as you can tell, now it's adhered correctly. So we go ahead and put this thing back down. There we go. You can still see everything that's happening here. And we are going to go to the next side. Okay, so there is an N-scale box. And, I undershot a little bit the flaps there, but, yeah, shoot. I mean, it's a 1/160th scale box made of cardboard. You can actually get those a little bit better, but this isn't so bad. So anyway, next step is if I want to do anything kind of a little bit further for this, I'm going to just pull the magnifier back out, pull this in for you, and zoom maybe a little bit back out. So here you can see the box right there. Looks pretty nice. So if you want, you can actually add additional details on here, like writing or things like that. Pickens Cane has a logo. You can write the logo on there, but in any case, that's a box. It looks pretty good. What we'll do is we'll go set it on the layout. You can see what it looks like. Well, there you have it. That is an Amazon box sitting on the doorstep of the house. Somebody got a delivery. I wonder what's in there. Probably something really nice. Anyway, that will be all for At the Bench today. Hope you enjoy this trashy episode. I guess actually that box isn't full of trash, but nonetheless, it can always be discarded later. And until next time, enjoy.